Welcome to Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well, the podcast for women who want to lose weight but are tired of counting and calculating all the food. I'm your host, Lisa Salisbury. I'm a certified health and weight loss coach and life coach, and most importantly, a recovered chronic dieter. I'll teach you to figure out why you are eating when you aren't hungry instead of worrying so much about what you are eating. Welcome to episode 20 here on the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast, where we are going to be chatting about anxiety, what it is, why does it come up during weight loss, and some strategies to help you overcome it. I know we have anxiety for a lot of reasons in weight loss and in life, but when we're thinking about weight loss and health, the biggest one, I think, is the question, will this work for me? And we get really nervous and anxious about this. We also have it come up with our distorted thought patterns, which we will be getting into some examples here as well. And you might be surprised to hear some of your thoughts in those. My guest is Angela Adams, who is a life coach specializing in coaching on anxiety. So she is the perfect one to really carry us through this topic. So let's dive in. Welcome, Angela, to the podcast. I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself right off the bat, and then we'll jump into our conversation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Lisa, for having me on your podcast. My name is Angela Adams. I am a certified life coach, and I really focus on coaching those who want to enjoy their life and thrive despite dealing with anxiety. And we all deal with anxiety, right? But I have dealt with it since I think my earliest recollection was about 10 years old. And so I've been dealing with chronic anxiety for years and years and years. And I wanted to get rid of it. I wanted to find a cure for it. I just didn't like having it. And I realized that there are things that I can do to manage it. And I realized that my anxiety, the anxiety I was dealing with, does not define who I am. I am so much more, and that I can actually really thrive, really love my life despite dealing with anxiety. And through coaching and other tools that I have found along the way, I have found that I can actually even embrace my anxiety. So I like to help people put a pause on their anxiety and to realize that their anxiety does not define who they are. They are so much more.
Okay, that is so amazing. I think anxiety is something that a lot of us deal with. If you could kind of just start with maybe some definitions. And the reason it seems like everyone knows what it is, but I was actually just having this conversation with one of my teenage daughters like 2 days ago. She was like, I worry. I don't know. Is that anxiety? Like she was talking about, especially she worries about what people think of her appearance, and she's sick right now, and so like she has that like redness under her nose, and so she's very self-conscious of that. So she was like, is that what anxiety is? Like, how would you define, what's the difference really between anxiety and just kind of regular garden variety worry?
Okay, well, it depends. There's chronic anxiety where those that have general anxiety disorder have that gnawing feeling. A lot of distorted thinking goes into anxiety. And there's the worry. And there's not a lot of difference, in my opinion, between worry and anxiety. I think anxiety right now has been such a buzzword.
Yeah. That's
Right?
why I'm like, let's not
Everyone
all
has
have anxiety, but yeah.
anxiety, and we all do. We always have anxiety, and anxiety isn't always bad. We think that anxiety is
Mm.
bad, but if you think about it, when you are doing something new for the very first time, don't you feel a little bit of that nervousness in your stomach, that anxiety, that
Yeah, sure.
we just don't know. We don't know what to expect. And there
Hmm.
is that little bit of anxiety. And sometimes, even if we're doing something that we're looking forward to, we can still have a little bit of anxiety because of the unknown. Chronic anxiety is when it is debilitating, when
Okay.
it just keeps you from being able to do, your normal day to day. It's constantly having those thought distortions. And I think chronic anxiety is something that just keeps you stuck.
Mm,
That
okay.
keeps you stuck where, and as a teenager, of course, we're going to worry about, what are
Yeah.
they going to think? I've got this, whatever. But anxiety is when it is just overpowering.
Okay. So, like, maybe if it kept her from going to school or something like
Right.
that, then we
Right.
would have more of an anxiety disorder. Currently,
Correct.
she's kind of experiencing something that's like natural, normal anxiety,
Anxiety.
normal worry. Yeah.
Right. Right. There's so many different anxieties out there. There's social anxiety. There's childhood separation anxiety, which
Mm,
is such a real thing. In fact, Steve Young, he was in his 30s when he was finally diagnosed with severe childhood separation anxiety.
really? And that
Yes,
continued to affect him into adulthood.
it did until he found he actually was able to put a name on it. He knew that something wasn't right, and yet here he is. How many multiple MVPs? He won multiple Super
Yeah.
Bowls, and he plowed through it. But it got to a point where he actually sought out help, realized there was something wrong, and now he's a spokesman and advocate for mental health, which is great.
Interesting.
So it is very interesting. So anxiety can keep us stuck, but he plowed through it,
He felt stuck in his
but
brain
he felt
still. He was
stuck,
like, why can't I move past this thought?
right? Or past
Yeah.
whatever's happening. He just didn't understand it.
Hmm. So it sounds like we have, like you said, regular type worry, typical,
Mhm.
wondering. It's kind of more of a wondering what other people think, wondering if this is going to be a problem. But then we have actual anxiety that is likely caused by some distorted thought patterns. Yes?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, when it comes to, for example, health and weight loss, which is what we mostly
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about on this podcast, and just creating healthy habits, how does anxiety play a role here? What kinds of distorted thought patterns do you feel like you see when people are trying to make changes to their health?
I see so many. One of them is all or nothing thinking. I mean, how many times, and you probably have had clients where, they put themselves on this all or nothing diet,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
You're either on or you're off.
You're off.
Yes.
And the minute you cross that line, then, oh my goodness, I failed,
Hmm.
right? I've just failed. And then it bleeds into other distorted, I'm never going to do this. This is too hard. But it's all or nothing. If I'm not all in, if I tell myself I can't eat any chocolate, period, and then I eat a piece of chocolate, boom, I just failed.
Hmm.
And there's that
Yeah.
all or nothing. It's, I'll never get this right. The most common words that we use in all or nothing thinking is never and always.
Yes.
Never and always.
Yeah.
And those are the worst words that create that all or nothing. And people call it black and white thinking. A lot of
Hmm.
perfectionism and shame are associated with all or nothing thinking.
And then when you do go off, so you're like, you're not on, so now you're off the diet, then I call that might as well eats. Well, I already ate
Right.
this, so I might as well
Yep.
have all the other things that were previously considered off limits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then your mind just starts going and dwelling on all those negatives, right?
Hmm.
Well, I'm never going to, I'm not going to be able to do this. Taking that negative detail, taking that, just that little, oh, I went off my plan here, and totally focusing on that.
Yeah.
Totally focusing on that. Like you said, then that leads to more negativity, more eating.
So it's dwelling on the negative, and then what our brains love to do is discount the positive. Because even though we
Totally.
know, yeah, Like we know that our emotional life generally is 50-50. We experience about half positive and about half negative emotions, not on a daily basis, but when you're looking at like a total year or a span of time where it's about 50-50. But because the brain loves to overemphasize the negative, because positive emotions don't kill us. So
Right.
clearly the negative emotion is more important to the brain. And so, would you say with anxiety, this is actually increased then, this natural overemphasis of the negative in order to keep us alive, which that's worked well for us for thousands and thousands of years as
Right.
humans. But then we definitely discount the positive.
Oh, totally discount the positive. Always looking for proof, looking for that negative proof. I don't know about you, but when I'm down on this dwelling on the negative spiral, our brain is obviously going to show us proof. Well, look at that. Last time you tried doing this, you did this, and
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to be able to lose weight. You're never going to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You're never gonna
Yeah.
be able to give up sugar, you're never gonna be able to do all these things that that you want to do, but dwelling on the negative, I think is we forget to look for the positives, and one of the things that I like to work with my clients, especially when they're stuck in dwelling on the all or nothing thinking or dwelling on the negative, is to give yourself 3 wins. And every day, I have even a little sticky note on my mirror in my bathroom. And 3 wins. What are the
Okay.
3 wins? What are my 3 positives for the day? I say my 3 wins for the day. Other people, what are 3 positive things for the day? Or what are 3 things that I like that I did today?
Mm. Okay.
And start training my brain on those positives, because we start retraining our brain to look for those positive, when we get into the habit of every day, oh, by the end of the day, I need to
Have three things.
have 3
Okay.
things. So what are we going to do? We're going to be looking for those things during the day, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when we start looking for the positive, we stop dwelling on the negative.
Yeah. Yeah, because your brain loves, like, every time you go to make a change, I always tell my clients, don't worry, your brain is going to be like, oh, you're adorable. Let me show you all the ways in the past that you have failed at
Exactly.
starting to exercise. Like, you think you're going to start walking every day? Ha 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 ha.
Think again.
Let me show you why that will not work for you, because here's all the ways you failed in the past. And
Right.
so it's so natural, but it's quite a bit more effort to look in the past for the times that we have succeeded, or just
Right.
looking in the past of just your day. The past can be years ago, but it also can just be this morning. That's also
Right.
the past.
Right. And I love having it on my bathroom mirror, because how many times do we go into the bathroom every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there it is. So that's a constant reminder. Now, I give myself at least 3 things, but I have found that I'm finding more and more
The more you focus
the
on it, the
more I
more that you
focus
see.
on it. But what's really
Yeah.
interesting, and as you were talking, it reminded me, the other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she is trying to break a not so healthy habit. And she has been struggling with smoking.
Okay.
And she's told me, I got myself down to 1 pack a day. And I said, that's great. I said, well, how many cigarettes are in a pack? And she said, 12. I said, okay. And she said, and for 2 weeks, I'm down to 2, but I'm still not there. And she was dwelling so much
Mm-hmm.
on those 2 cigarettes she was having a day
Mm-hmm.
that she discounted the fact that, oh my goodness, she is 10 cigarettes closer to
Mm-hmm.
reaching that goal of quitting altogether. So
Yeah.
and our brain does that, right? Oh, but look, yes, never mind that you've given up 10,
Mm-hmm.
but you
Yeah.
still have 2. And I was talking to her and I said, but what about those 10? What about the 10 you gave up? And it was just really interesting to see this light bulb go on. And well, yeah. I said, isn't it funny how your brain just wants you to just to nitpick. And it's just like eating. It's just, I love chocolate. And Halloween was right around the corner, right? So 3 days ago, I had 3 of those bite-sized Snicker bars. They were
Mhm.
so good. And at the end of the day, I thought, okay, so tomorrow I'm going to try just having one.
Mhm.
And I ended up having two. I thought, okay, I had two. All right. Wasn't quite the goal I wanted. But hey, I didn't have three, right? So
Yeah.
now I'm just one more closer.
Yeah.
So just trying to shift those little mental shifts
Mhm.
and training our brains to see the positive.
When when I start a session with a client as I'm one-on-one coaching with them, my first question to them is always what went well this week?
I love that question. I
After a few weeks, they're like, okay, I knew you were going to ask me this. And I really tried to think of something because they want to come and be like, this is how many times I like ate 3 Snickers bars or whatever
right,
it was. Or, I didn't get all the movement in that I wanted to, or I didn't do those worksheets that you told me to, whatever it is, they're like feeling bad. And so I never say, like, okay, what was challenging this week? That's never how we start. We always find at least 2 or 3 things that went really well. And sometimes they're even surprised because if they say nothing, I'm like, oh no, we're not moving on. Well,
I
we
love
discovered
that.
some things and there's always something. There's always
Right,
something just like that. Well, I wanted 3 and I had 2. And that
right.
that went well.
That was a win in my book, right? That's a
Yeah.
win. And I love that you start your sessions like that. I think that is brilliant. And I think that just helps your clients now to train to
Yeah.
look for the things that go well during the week. It's awesome.
When we're thinking about like dwelling on the negative and discounting the positive, another kind of word for that I think you use is overgeneralization, which is, it reminds me of the Lego movie song, Everything is Awesome,
I know.
right? But really, we know that is not actually what they're feeling, but just doing that overgeneralization, whether on the positive side or on the negative side, because sometimes we're just automatically, how are things going? Fine, fine, everything's great. Like that's an overgeneralization too, because it's okay to be like, oh, it was a rough day because of this and that. But how do you see overgeneralization as one of those distorted thought patterns that leads to more anxiety?
It's interesting because I was thinking about coming on this podcast and how many times have I, made a goal, okay, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. And then I get on the scale and I gained 2.
Hmm.
And so that overgeneralization, you know what? I tried this once, it didn't work. So that's evidence that it's going to happen over and over and over. You're never going to do that. With anxiety, it's a constant, it's telling yourself constantly, well, if it happened once, it's always going to happen.
Oh,
And
like
we
it'll
see
always be this way.
it'll
More of that
always.
always never language.
Exactly. More that
Hmm.
always never language. Rejection is one of the biggest things. And I see this in young adults all the time. If I was rejected once, well, I'm always going to be rejected. Something's terribly wrong with me. It's going to happen over and over and over again because it
Hmm.
happened one time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we think things like, well, I should or shouldn't, which is
Hmm.
another one of those thoughts similar to like the always never. Anytime we're using that should language, a lot of times for my clients, I notice that that's like diet mentality language. I shouldn't have this. I should eat
Right.
more vegetables, those kinds of statements. And that also makes them anxious.
It makes you very anxious because it puts so much pressure on you,
Hmm.
right? I shouldn't be doing this. Well, okay, but you did.
Right.
Right? Okay, so telling yourself you shouldn't or you should, I love talking back to that. Who said that you shouldn't?
Mm-hmm.
Where is it written that says you shouldn't? And a lot of times we just make these stories up in our heads. We have these high expectations. And one of the telltale signs of perfectionism and those who have chronic anxiety is those high expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I shouldn't do this. I should do. Why not? Why shouldn't you?
Yeah, it's such a good question to ask ourselves. I had a client yesterday that was worried about an upcoming trip and what if this goes wrong and what if this goes badly? And I said, what if it goes better than you expected? And she was like, what? And so just like that, like, why should it go bad? What if it goes well? Like
Right.
just to turn it around and say, what if I should actually do that thing?
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love questioning. I think one of the biggest tools that I have found that has helped me with my anxiety is questioning, questioning all those thoughts. And it sounds
Hmm.
like such a no brainer, but how
Hmm.
many times do we believe our thoughts to be true? Do we believe that those stories that we're telling us are the absolute truth?
I would say most of the time.
Most of the time, right?
Yeah.
When
Especially if you
I
don't have a coach looking at your thoughts.
Exactly. And when I learned that you could actually question your thoughts, what? I love knowing that really the source of all of our problems really is our brain, right? If you think about it,
Yes.
it really is our brain, because our brain offers us so many thousands of thoughts. And if we just really believe all those thoughts to be true, we're toast.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest tools that I love is just questioning, is this true? Is this 100% true? What else could be possible? Just like you asked her, well, what if you had the best time of your life?
Yeah. What if
What
everything does go right?
what if it goes better than you even thought possible?
So, with that tool of questioning your thoughts, so you've listed a few. What if it goes better? What if that's not true?
Hmm. What
How
else
could
could be
that,
true?
what
What
else
else?
could be true? Okay. How else can you question your thoughts? What other ways do you do that?
You know, what if nothing has gone wrong right here? What if this is exactly how it's supposed to be? Just what if this is true?
Hmm.
Then what? I think it's interesting to explore both sides. And questioning your thoughts really opens you up to seeing things in a different perspective. I like to think of it too as okay, what's the rational response here?
Hmm.
Because really, those distorted thought patterns are irrational thinking patterns, right?
Yeah.
So, what would a rational person say to this? What's the rational thing?
And the other question that's really similar there is believing that that's if something is true and then just saying, so what? What if that is true?
Right.
From both angles, like, and and then what? And you get down to the point where you're like, oh, I would just feel bad. That's what would happen.
That's
Because
it.
I would be
Feeling.
embarrassed or I would have to spend more money, which would be uncomfortable. Like all when we come down to it, it's like it's probably just a feeling.
Right.
Like I'm going to feel something I don't want to feel. So another option instead of asking like is that really true? Like what if it actually is true? So what?
And then what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? And I love that because for so many years, I was trying to resist that anxiety. I was trying to just make it go away, pretend that it will, if I ignored it, it would go away. Right. And then when I really stopped and acknowledged that, okay, this is what it is. And when I got
Like calling it
confirmation,
out, like
yes,
saying,
calling
okay,
it
I
out,
have anxiety.
there it
Okay.
is. Okay. And then saying, okay, so what? So what does that mean?
And then what did you discover?
And I discovered that all it means is that I have something that I am dealing with. And so now I get to decide what I want to do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want it to manage me or do I want to learn how to manage it? Do
Mm-hmm.
I want it to define me or do I want to define who I am regardless of this? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you ask, okay, so what or now what? I thought having anxiety, I was something, I was wrong.
Mm.
Does that, I was
Mm-hmm.
bad.
Mm-hmm. Something was wrong with you.
Something was
Yeah.
wrong. It was just something that I have to deal with. And when I got over the fact that, oh, okay, so this is going to be my constant companion, maybe my whole life, I will tell you that now that I have worked through these tools, and coaching was probably like the last piece of the puzzle that just totally fit. And with all of these tools, I don't have in fact, I would probably say 90% of the time, I don't feel intense anxiety
Hmm. That's
anymore.
amazing.
But I was able to face it, acknowledge that it was there, allow it to be there, and then learn how to manage it so it didn't manage me.
Yeah. We should probably interject a little here too. This is, of course, these aren't tools for panic attack level anxiety.
No,
We're
no, no,
not
no, no.
talking about things that need medical treatment. We're talking about everyday anxiety that is just, like you said, that little constant companion, but is not so debilitating that we need to seek medical help. So
Right.
let's do be clear that
Yes. And I'm glad
yeah.
you said that because I'm a firm believer that there isn't just one right way of doing things. So if you do have those panic attacks, if you do have that chronic level, then there is nothing wrong with seeking a professional therapist. There's nothing wrong with medication if that's what you choose to do,
Mhm.
coaching. I have done all of that. And but I will tell you that the tools that I found in coaching helped me understand my anxiety in such a way that has given me that desire to help other people too. But
Yeah.
yes, you're absolutely right.
And it can be if you seek medical treatment with a licensed therapist or that sort of thing, or you are on medication, it doesn't discount the work you need to do with your brain as well.
Exactly.
So that it does go hand in hand, these types of tools with
Exactly.
medication or other help like that. Yeah.
Exactly. I work with a couple of clients right now who work with a therapist who are, also taking anxiety medication, and just having the coach piece too has given them so much more power over their anxiety, if you will. So they have
Yeah.
all three pieces.
Perfect. What other tools do you have? So we've talked about questioning your brain, we've talked about like listing your 3 wins. What other tools do you have that our listeners can start implementing right away to help
Okay.
with some of those anxious thoughts?
One of the tools that has been huge for me and for my clients is really allowing that
Mm,
anxiety to be there, or allowing whatever emotion it is, the discomfort, the disappointment, to allow yourself to actually feel it, to acknowledge it. So many times we want to resist it, we want to react to it, right? We want to just
push it
ignore it,
away.
push it
Mhm.
down, and go about, distracting ourselves, right? But when you really face it, I like to think of it as, I'm at a railroad crossing, and here comes
Mhm.
an oncoming train of emotions. And you've got the red lights and you've got the arms that come down to tell you to do what? To
To stop.
stop,
Yeah.
right? And when I learned how to stop instead of running away from my anxiety, to stop and acknowledge that it was there and just actually allow it, describe what it felt like in my body, to get into my body and describe it in detail. That's one of the biggest tools to help me get grounded, to help bring that peace back in, because it opens up. A lot of times we don't know why we're feeling anxious.
Mhm. Yeah.
And until I actually face it, until I actually acknowledge that it's there, until I actually allow it to be there, my mind is not clear. But when I do allow it, it clears up my mind. And then I can ask, okay, what is my anxiety trying to tell me right now?
Mhm.
And that has been a huge tool. Just what is it trying to tell me? Instead of being afraid of it, pretend like it's a friend that you're sitting next to and trying to understand, okay, what is it trying to tell me? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to understand what it is that's causing your anxiety. and what it's telling you to do.
Awesome. That sounds so helpful. I think allowing our emotions is such a powerful thing to do. I talk about that with all kinds of different emotions, allowing the urge or cravings to be present in our body. And a lot of times when I'm teaching this concept of allowing, then my clients or my listeners get confused and they think, "Oh, I'm going to allow myself to do this thing. I'm going to allow myself to
Right.
eat the brownie when I want the brownie, like that's allowing." But let's be clear that allowing means allowing the emotion to flood through our body without the need to solve for it. We
Right.
don't need to either push it down. We don't need to eat the thing. We don't need to spin in the circles, whatever the anxiety is telling us to worry about. We just can be anxious,
Mm-hmm.
be craving something, be disappointed, and actually move forward in our lives at the same time.
Right. And what I have found is when we do allow those emotions to run through our bodies, most of the time they dissipate
Yeah.
altogether.
So I've seen research that says that emotions last somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds in the body. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about the chemical reaction that comes
Yes.
from the thought. So Angela and I both teach the model, which, as a quick review, we have circumstances, which are the facts, and then we have a thought about them. We give those facts meaning, and then that creates a feeling or emotion in the body, which drives our actions. So if that emotion lasts for about 90 seconds, some people will say, well, that's not true. I feel anxious all day. Would you say that's because they're having the same thought over and over and over? Or is it because they're pushing that emotion down and not allowing it to come through their body?
Actually, I think it has something to do with both. We don't like to feel negative emotion, right? Whether it's
No.
anxiety, whether it's worry, whether it's any type of discomfort, we don't like to feel. And what's interesting is that we spend all day running away from it or pushing it down, right? And what happens? It just intensifies. It's like this little puppy that's following you around all day
Mhm.
long, getting louder, barking louder, wanting your full attention all the time. If we just take that 90 seconds to allow it to run through our bodies and understand what it feels like and understand how it feels in our body, then usually it leaves our body. It really,
Yeah.
I think about it, it just wants to be noticed.
Yeah.
Those emotions just want to be noticed. And when we can notice them, then we can understand them a whole lot better. And our bodies were made to feel.
Emotions. Yeah, for
They
sure.
were, and they know what to do with it if we allow our bodies to do what it knows how to do.
Yeah, for sure. So helpful. This whole conversation has been so helpful. I think the work this week, if you want to do a little experiment on this episode, is to try it. Because I think when we first hear this concept of allowing, if you're a person who does have a lot of anxiety or does have a lot of disappointment or whatever the emotion is that kind of lives with you all the time, you think, well, that's not true. There's no way that that will work. But like, try it. Try.
Yes.
And I think the buzzword on this in social media is feel your feelings. But
Yeah.
this is how it's done, is to allow that emotion to be present in the body. And like Angela said, you describe it, you notice where it is, give it a
Right.
name. And I think
Yes.
that was really powerful for you. You said in the beginning is when you just finally realize, like, oh, what this is that I feel all the time, it's called anxiety.
Hmm.
And
It
then it's not
is.
this nebulous thing anymore. You're like, oh, I have a name for it. And
Right.
try to name that emotion that you're feeling and just try it. Like, I would just challenge you guys to try it this week and see if you can create the experience of that emotion dissipating. Because when that happens, it's pretty fantastic.
It is amazing. It is almost like magic.
Yeah.
So I love
Well,
it.
thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of your wisdom. Do you have any last words that you want to add here?
No, I would just agree with you. I say try it. Try all of it. Try questioning your thoughts. Try finding three positives. If you could find more, even better. Become your biggest fan, you know, and then allow those feelings to be there.
Perfect. Well, can you tell people where they can connect with you or learn more about what you do?
Yes, they can find me at angelaadamscoaching.com. I also have a weekly podcast that comes out every Tuesday. It's called Embrace It All. And I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram under Angela Adams Coaching.
Okay. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes, of course. And thanks again for being here with us today.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. It was great.
Hey, thanks for listening today. If you're ready to get some personalized coaching from me, I'd encourage you to schedule a free strategy session. Visit www.wellwithlisa.as.me, or it's easier just to find that link in the show notes. We'll talk about where you currently are with your weight loss goals, and I'll give you some actionable tools you can start implementing right away. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're learning something new and enjoying the podcast, I'd love for you to leave me a 5-star rating and a review. Thanks again for joining me, Lisa Salisbury, in this episode of Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well.